Welcome back, and thank you, Gagan and Leona, for joining us for another episode of Law and Order, the Canadian Workplace Edition. Today's episode, we're going to cover what are the best practices to get a job, especially as a foreign worker or also for workers in Canada as well. So we'll start by asking our first question to Leona. Leona, what are the current best practices for resumes?
Best practices for resumes here are a little bit different than what they might be in some other countries. So some of the things that we really want to focus in on are the education, the skills, the experience, and the achievements. So that becomes very important, particularly because so many resumes are now going through AI filters or they're going through applicant tracking systems that companies are using. What's important, though, is what's to leave out. And what we should not have on a resume is a photo, our date of birth, our marital status, where we are born. These are all points that are common in other countries, but we don't do that here. These are all items that are protected under our human rights, and it's best to leave all of that off.
Thank you for that. My next question is directed at Gagan. What if somebody does not mention their work experience in their home country when applying for a study permit? Can they provide their prior work experience when applying under Express Entry?
Thank you for that question, Meg. And we bump into, as immigration practitioners, we come across that question very frequently, that when you're applying for a study permit and you're applying from your home country, there are certain experiences that you take it off from your resume and you are just focusing on experience that may be very relevant to your education that you're proposing and you are looking to join in Canada. But fast forward now that you're eligible for Express Entry, I would strongly encourage you bring back any experience that you left out, because it's better that the government does not find it. You volunteer that information. That's much better for you to volunteer that information to the government rather than they find it out and send you a letter asking you to explain why this information was missing in your application for Express Entry. So if a procedural fairness letter comes in asking that, okay, in your home country, you had an experience in a certain field that you did not mention, how come you have not provided us at this stage of Express Entry when they are reviewing your application for permanent residency? You don't want to mess around your application at that point at all, for sure. So it's always better that you can explain that you did not try to take any benefit by withholding that information at the time you were applying for your study permit. But at this point, they would question you that why are you now withholding? So it's always best, and that's what we see in our various case laws, that hallmark of any application is how you justify it, how you are transparent, and how you are intelligently putting everything out there for the government to make a good decision based on your application, not on withholding and not providing them that information, which you may think it's not relevant, but IRCC will find it relevant if they are going to dig into deep into your background. So that's my suggestion, that even if you forgot to mention certain work experience in your application, don't shy away, don't repeat your mistake by still withholding it and not informing the government.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarity. How can we help employers understand foreign work experience? Leona?
Thank you for the question. Foreign work experience is very interesting for us as HR practitioners here in Canada. We are handicapped. We're very familiar with the companies that we have here, with the big names. However, there are many large, well-established organizations in other countries. And because we are not familiar, we can sometimes not take the time to look it up. And we could be setting aside a very qualified candidate for all the reasons. I suggest as a workaround to this, that in the first bullet point after you have the company name, maybe that's the point where you indicate what industry sector it is. perhaps maybe something around the ranking of that company. Sometimes it might be one of the top 3 players in the organization, or around the volume of the business. This is generally public information, or that it is an international company. Things like this will help an HR person or any kind of an employer to get a better sense of the skills and the expertise that's actually being offered to them. It's a shame when we discount the valuable experience that individuals are coming to us with because we just don't know and we don't take that little extra time to find out. Putting in information with regards to the industry sector or the ranking or the scope of the business will also help the applicant with these AI search filters that are coming through, as well as with the applicant tracking systems. So basically, a little bit of information that's provided to help the employer is going to help with that job search process. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Leona. That is extremely insightful. And I know a lot of people, international workers as well, have been wondering how to tackle that. My next question to you, Gagan, what if a person, an individual who's applying either for express entry or for a work permit, has worked with the same employer in multiple positions for about, say, 10 years? Should this person mention only their current position or also mention all of the other positions that they've held with the same employer in their duration of work with them?
Thank you again for that question, Meg. And just as much we think that's so easy, we just need to put our most current position and apply for either a work permit or express entry. No, that's not a solution to the situation. We highly encourage, and that's the right way to do it. Break down your positions. If you've been with the same employer for 10 years or 5 years or how long you have been, break down each positions that you held and each time what your job duties were, how they got more complex, more responsible as you grow up the ladder. And you could be starting as a developer and now you are in a senior managerial position, or you are into a specialized knowledge position, and that would help you your path for intra-company transfer applications. Please break down your resume reflecting all your job duties, job descriptions for each positions that you've held so far from the time you joined to the present time. It's more logical. Think about it. The government wants to see how did you grow your skill set. You joined as a developer. You're now in a managerial position. How did that path come across for you? How did that play around for you? So it's always good. Break it down, tell them the skill set you learned, and that ultimately helps you in your applications as well, whether it's your work permit application, whether it's your express entry, because that clearly outlines and it clearly lays down for the government to see your path, how you have learned. And nobody is expecting that you would know everything as a managerial, you would know all the skill sets that you would have learned over the years and groomed your skill set over the years. They all want to know that path. So it's best, don't rush for it. Take your time, and as Leona mentioned, break down your resume should clearly reflect the positions that you held, and that is one of the ways that you can provide such a solid application to IRCC when you're submitting either an ICT work permit or a regular work permit with high wage LMIAs. That's just our humble suggestions to our listeners.
Thank you so much. I think that is extremely insightful as well. A lot of people struggle with defining their job growth. My next question to Leona would be, what can applicants do to explain employment gaps in their resume?
Thank you. Many employees are going to have gaps in their employment. I think it's important to put something in there to address it. We don't want for the employer to think that the applicant does not have a firm connection to employment, that they're not interested in working. Rather, we want to put something in there that will help the applicant to gain that interview, because that really is the purpose of the resume, is to facilitate a meeting where there can be a further conversation and have that be the start of the process. I would suggest we prefer to see resumes in a chronological format. And I would say that if there's a gap there, it's not inappropriate to say relocation, to make it clear, because when somebody is looking at the work history, they should recognize that there has been a change that's happened through the individual having worked in one country and they're now coming here. I don't think relocation is a bad thing to put in there as well. But I think in addition to relocation, I would suggest if the individual is able to also put perhaps a little hyphen and indicate that there's been a skills upgrade, or perhaps there's been some volunteer work experience that's happened in there as well. These are important signals for the employer to show that the individual has continued to develop their employment currency. So perhaps they have been off for a year or so and they're in a tech type role. That doesn't stop them from doing some additional certifications. That could well be there. I think it's always important to address it, to say something, and to have a good explanation, even though there's been a break from paid employment, that there still has been some sort of personal development to allow the person to come forward and to move forward in an enhanced state from the employer's perspective. There's a couple of other things I would like to point out as well. When we do have an employment gap or several gaps on a resume, it becomes more and more difficult for that individual to get that interview, particularly where these tools are being used in terms of the applicant tracking systems or AI. It unfortunately can filter people out, and that's not right, but that is what's happening to some extent. What I would suggest is for individuals as they're moving forward with their job search, not just to rely on job boards and LinkedIn to look for opportunities. If you're doing that, you're going to be looking for a lot longer because you're going to have a lot more competition. So in addition to doing that, I would also suggest for individuals to look at doing some networking within their own circles or within their own industry. There are opportunities that will be provided to people just because they happen to be in the right place at the right time, even though a job advertisement hasn't even gone out there. And often individuals are looking to work with recruiters. Recruiters will have a difficult time sometimes to present a resume if there are a number of different gaps that are there. So this networking piece becomes very important. One final point I would like to share is just the reminder that the majority of companies in Canada are small in comparison to international standards. So I will give you a statistic. In the US, a small business is considered 500 employees or less. In Canada, it's a large employer if you have 500 employees or more. And that's only 0.2% of all companies. So if an individual is looking for an employment opportunity, there are perhaps some gaps that are there as well, and they're only focusing in on large companies, it's going to take them a little bit longer to land in many cases. So I do suggest that people take a little bit more of a pragmatic approach and maybe look in other ways and don't just rely on the technology to help you find a job. Looking for work is a job in and of itself.
Thank you, Leona. I think those are some great pearls of wisdom for everyone who's looking for a job right now in the market. Gagan, my last and final question to you. There's a lot of foreign nationals who are also PR holders who may be in the opportunity to apply for a super visa for their parents. Do they also need to prepare a resume for them?
That's an interesting question, and it surprises my clients all the time that why would I need to provide a resume for my parents who may be 80 years old. We see procedural fairness letters being issued by IRCC requesting them to provide such resumes. But take it easy. This is just for the government to have an overall picture of what the parents have been doing since the time they graduated and to present time. They just want to make sure that what's their source of income, were they into any government jobs, were they trained for any military reasons. They just want to do a good deep background check before they are approving these super visa applications for the parents. So it's just about giving them, they probably are finding some gap in their experience, or they just want to make sure that there is no gap and they have a complete understanding of their background, of their employment history, of their education history, etc. And therefore they are requesting these information from the parents. But I'll just quickly jump on to what Leona mentioned about gaps, and that's such an interesting point. Even from the work permit applications, study permit applications, I've come across my clients who would say that, oh, I took a gap year, but you know what, my application may not look good if I'm going to say I took a gap year, so maybe I'll just add something there. No, don't do that. In real life, in reality, and in real world, we take gap years. That's normal. You just have to inform the government you took a gap year. Did you do something? Oh yes, I was teaching the kids around my neighborhood. At that experience, you were so interested in learning and in teaching that you actually took that time when you took a gap year in teaching students around your neighborhood. That's literally an experience that you can put in there. So be real and inform the government what you have been actually going through, whether it's your position that you've grown from a lower level to a higher level or into a managerial specialized knowledge, whether you expanded your horizon by joining any training sessions or adding more certifications in your skill set, in your resumes. Just go about it, let the government know. At times they may not even relate. You were into IT and you just thought of, okay, jumping and changing into something else, some other field, but give them the reasoning behind it. So it's always good. You acknowledge, you recognize the gaps, or you recognize that, okay, if the government is asking about your parents' resume, it is not something unheard of. It's very common. You just provide the information that they are requesting. It's only for them to have a complete picture of the background of the parents so that they can approve the super visa, which is good for 5 or 10 years. That's all. So be very careful, respond to the government on time, and these questions may look weird to us, but it's very relevant for the government.
Thank you, Gagan and Leona, for joining us for this very exciting episode all about employers and employees in Canada. And we will see you all in our next episode. Thank you so much.